Before becoming the world's strongest man, Mark Gerald Henry was from the small town of Silsbee, Texas. Henry had a terrifying but funny experience as a child. Mark became a wrestling fan at a young age and of course attended local shows. During one event, Henry was near the front row and saw his favorite wrestler, Andre the Giant. Mark reached out to touch the Giant but accidentally tripped and fell over the barricade. Thankfully, Andre was a gentle giant and helped get the future world champion back over the barricade. Little did Andre know that both he and that kid would become WWE Hall of Famers. Sadly though, Mark Henry's childhood wasn't all good times. He experienced loss at an early age when his father died when Mark was 12 years old. This left only Henry's mother to raise him and his older brother. As he grew, it was clear Mark was built differently, reportedly weighing 225 pounds at 8 years old. This made Henry a natural for weightlifting, and by the time he was a freshman in high school, he could squat 600 pounds. Then, in 1990, Mark Henry won the National High School Powerlifting Championship and set multiple records. Mark continued to pursue weightlifting and eventually earned the opportunity to compete at the 1996 Olympics. During that time, Henry became a bit of a national star, which caught the attention of WWE. Being a longtime wrestling fan, Mark Henry was eager to join, and he made his first WWE appearance on the March 11th, 1996 episode of Raw. Henry was sitting in the crowd when Jerry Lawler began taunting him. Of course, the world's strongest man wouldn't let this slide and press slammed the King. But it would be a while before we saw Mark again. That's because Henry still had to compete at the Olympics. While he was expected to capture gold, he suffered a back injury and came in at a disappointing 14th place. Despite the lackluster showing, Mark Henry was still a WWE wrestler. After getting some training in, Henry returned at the 1996 SummerSlam, doing commentary during Jerry Lawler's match against Jake the Snake Roberts. Lawler won and then began ridiculing the Snake. Henry stepped up and stopped the King, which made way for Mark Henry's first WWE match. One question though, do you like things that are awesome? Well then you'll love Bespoke Post, the sponsor of this video. Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club that brings you an awesome box of top shelf goods from under the radar brands. One reason Bespoke Post is awesome is that 90% of their products come from small brands, many of which are based right here in the US. Here's how Bespoke Post works. You fill out a preference quiz and, based on that, you receive a box of cool products like kitchen goods, clothing, outdoor gear, barware, and much more. Don't worry, you get to preview the box before it's shipped to decide if you like it. If you don't, you can swap it out for a different box or just skip the month entirely for no charge. Each bespoke box of awesome has around $70 worth of stuff inside, but only costs you a fraction of the value. Now that's all great, but is the stuff inside truly awesome? I'm thrilled to say, yes. I got the Wren box, which came with a compact camp chair, and the Crackle box, which had a 1 mini log, fire starters, roasting forks, classic artisan s'mores kit, and campfire stories. Both of these boxes were really fun, especially the Crackle, since it was one I could use with my family. If this sounds awesome to you, use my link in the pinned comment below to check out Bespoke Post. Also, use code TAPOUTCORNER20 at checkout to get 20% off your first box of awesome. Thanks to Bespoke Post for sponsoring this video. Now let's see Mark Henry's first WWE match. Mark Henry's first WWE match was at In Your House Mind Games, where he took on Jerry Lawler, but King regained his composure and then found himself in a headlock. The two exchanged hammerlocks before frustrated King attempted a body slam, which Henry countered into an overhead press. The rookie then easily tossed the King through the ropes and out of the ring. Lawler got back up and resorted to cheating when he pulled an object out of his trunks. A few punches brought the big man to his knees, and a couple of chops to the King's crown. Triple H also tried his shot at the Olympian, but all three were quickly disposed of. After weeks of humiliation, Mark Henry ended the night standing tall. The match itself? Well, there wasn't a whole lot to it, which is to be expected since Henry had only been training for a few months. Mark's offense was pretty limited, but I think that was alright. After making his in-ring debut, Henry's next big match was slated for that year's Survivor Series, but in what would become a recurring theme in his career, Mark had to miss the event due to an injury. Because of this, his most notable moment to close out his first year in WWE was defeating Triple H, Goldust, and Crush in a tug-of-war contest. Due to injuries and taking some time off to train in weightlifting, we wouldn't see Henry back in the company for an entire year. At the end of 1997, Mark Henry returned to the ring, but without as much hype. He kicked off his return by mainly competing in short matches, where he easily picked up the win. Things got way better for Mark in 1998 though. At the start of the year, Henry became part of the faction, the Nation of Domination. He joined forces with The Rock, Farouk, D'Lo Brown, Kama Mustafa, and later member Owen Hart. The Nation really helped Mark Henry come into his own, and it led to his first WrestleMania match. At the event, Henry teamed with D'Lo Brown in a tag team battle Battle Royal. The duo didn't win, but was a step forward for Mark's career. From there, Henry became featured more regularly on Raw, most notably taking part in the nation's lengthy feud with D-Generation X. Mark Henry also received some singles action during that year's King of the Ring tournament. He defeated the legendary Terry Funk in the first round, but was knocked out in the next by eventual winner Ken Shamrock. Things got better the following month though at the Fully Loaded pay-per-view when he defeated Vader in a battle of super heavyweights. Around this time, Henry took part in one of the most memorable angles of his career. On an episode of Raw in August of 1998, The Rock had the Nation members hold down DX member Chyna. Rock ordered Mark to kiss her. Before the big man could though, Shawn Michaels ran in for the save. Despite the disruption, the world's strongest man developed a crush on the ninth wonder of the world. Mark was persistent in trying to get Chyna to date him, even resorting to threatening to sue her over sexual harassment. Finally, she caved and the two went on a date. Somehow, they hit it off and became an item, but the good times didn't last for long. In one of the most embarrassing moments of Henry's career, Chyna played a tape that showed he cheated on her with a man dressed as a woman. To make matters worse, the tape was played while Mark Henry's mom was in the audience. While the Chyna storyline was going on, the Nation came to an end. On an episode of Raw, Henry and Deal called out The Rock for not paying attention to the group. The Great One called them jabronis and wanted to have a word with them. It must not have gone well, as Henry and Deal later attacked their leader in the main event. This set up the world's strongest man facing off and defeating The Rock at the Judgment Day pay-per-view, with the help of D'Lo, of course. Even though Rock got his win back against Henry on Raw a couple of weeks later, it was still a notable moment in Mark's career. After all this, Mark Henry's character continued to become less serious, as he started to be referred to as sexual chocolate. While fans had fun with the nickname, the angle did have some of the biggest lowlights of the Attitude Era. In one segment that featured a therapist, Henry's character admitted to having a sexual relationship with his own sister. Thankfully, it was never brought up again. Mark's friendship with D'Lo Brown also took a hit, as he betrayed his friend to help Jeff Jarrett win the Intercontinental and European Championships at SummerSlam 1999. Jarrett then rewarded the world's strongest man by giving him the European title. This was the first time Henry had ever won championship gold in WWE. Unfortunately, it was a brief run, as Henry dropped the European title a month later to D'Lo at Unforgiven. Henry's run as a villain was short-lived, however, as he soon made up with D'Lo after confessing he was a sex addict. Despite the confession, things were about to get even crazier. In one of the most infamous WWE storylines of all time, Henry and Mae Young got a bit romantic, which led to Mae becoming pregnant. Just to note, Mae Young was 77 years old at the time, and Henry was 29. The storyline culminated when the senior citizen somehow gave birth to a hand. Apparently, their love was not meant to be, and the two soon went their separate ways. Not long after that storyline wrapped up, WWE seemed to be second-guessing Mark Henry. They took Henry off TV and sent him to their development system, Ohio Valley Wrestling, to improve his in-ring work and conditioning. This was also an extra challenging time in Henry's life, as his mother had also passed away. While back in training, Henry missed out on the entire WCW and ECW vs. WWE Invasion storyline and wasn't seen on TV again until 2002. Following his comeback, Mark Henry would compete in various tests of strength. While this highlighted his impressive power, it didn't really help Henry connect with fans. Not long after returning, Mark suffered a knee injury and went back to Ohio Valley. In August of 2003, Henry was called back up to the main roster. He was brought in by Teddy Long, who was managing the Thuggin' and Buggin' Enterprise stable. Mark had a prominent role and engaged in feuds with stars like Goldberg, Shawn Michaels, and Booker T. Just as things were starting to get back on track, they were derailed again when Mark Henry injured his quadriceps. This led the world's strongest man to miss yet another year of action. In 2005, Henry returned to the SmackDown brand on the last episode of the year. He helped Eminem capture the tag team titles against Batista and Rey Mysterio. Henry's alliance with Eminem was short-lived, as he set his sights solely on Batista, who was the world heavyweight champion. Unfortunately, the storyline was cut short when the Animal got injured at a non-televised event. This may have had something to do with Batista being on the cover of SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. See this video for more details. Anyways, in the storyline, it was Mark Henry who injured Batista and sidelined the Animal. The world title was vacated and a new champion was crowned via a 20-man battle royal. Kurt Angle was a surprise participant who ended up winning after last eliminating Henry. The next week, Mark Henry interfered during a match between Angle and Angle's former manager, Daivari. At the end, Daivari announced he was now managing Mark Henry. With Daivari by his side, Mark Henry fought Kurt Angle at the 2006 Royal Rumble for the world title. The two Olympians fought in a physical match, and thanks to a steel chair, Kurt retained his title. Unsurprisingly, Henry didn't take the loss that well, and interfered in a World Heavyweight Championship match between Angle and the newly returned Undertaker on SmackDown. Not only did Henry potentially cost the dead man the heavyweight title, but he also put him through the announcer's table. In retaliation, Undertaker destroyed Daivari on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event. This built to a showdown between the World's Strongest Man and the Dead Man, with the feud culminating in a casket match at WrestleMania 22. This is the first time since 1998 that Mark Henry had wrestled at the Showcase of the Immortals. Similar to 8 years ago, Henry was unable to end the streak, but still wanted another shot at The Undertaker. The two faced off on the SmackDown after WrestleMania. During the rematch, Mark's manager Daivari returned, but had now found a new client, one that was even bigger, the Great Khali. The World's Strongest Man won none of that, and his rivalry with The Undertaker ended there. In the aftermath, Henry remained in a prominent role and even defeated World Heavyweight Champion Rey Mysterio in a couple of non-title matches. Henry and Kurt Angle then reignited their feud and faced off at Judgment Day, this time with Henry picking up the win. But it was only by countout, and Angle quickly got his revenge by attacking him with a chair after the match. But still, despite the setback, Henry kicked off his path of destruction and began injuring everyone he stepped into the ring with. This set up a feud with a returning Batista, the man Mark Henry had put out of action months earlier. The two were set to have a big showdown at the Great American Bash, but Henry was hit with an injury again during a 6-man tag team match at Saturday Night's Main Event. This latest injury caused him to miss 10 months of in-ring action. Finally, on the May 11th, 2007 episode of SmackDown, the World's Strongest Man returned. He made an immediate impact by attacking his old foe, The Undertaker, and costing him the World Heavyweight title after Edge cashed in his Money in the Bank contract. Henry ended up biting off more than he could chew though, as the Dead Man got his revenge at the Unforgiven pay-per-view when he put Henry away with a last ride. Taker also came out on top in their rematch a few weeks later on SmackDown, thereby ending their second feud, much like their first. Soon after, Mark Henry became a member of the ECW roster and set his sights on Undertaker's brother, Kane. This set up a match at Armageddon, where Big Daddy V and Henry teamed together to take on Kane and CM Punk. That night, the massive duo was able to defeat the Bigger Machine and the Straight Edge Superstar. Going into 2008, not a whole lot happened for Mark Henry for the first few months. Things did pick up though in a big way when Henry competed in an ECW championship match at Night of Champions. Mark beat Big Show and the champion Kane to win the title. It was an important moment as it was only the second time Mark Henry had won a championship in WWE. It was also technically Henry's first world championship. Soon after winning the ECW title, Henry picked up a new manager, Tony Atlas. However, the WWE Hall of Famer couldn't lead Henry to long-term success. Henry's title run ended after about 2 months when he lost to Matt Hardy at Unforgiven. In the aftermath, Mark's stock seemed to lower a bit in WWE as he came up short in a rematch with Hardy and then engaged in a feud with Finlay and Hornswoggle. To make matters worse, the former ECW champ came out on the losing side of a Belfast Brawl match at Armageddon. As Mark Henry entered 2009, he qualified for the Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 25. At the event, however, Henry was less successful, as CM Punk was the one who got the briefcase. After WrestleMania, Henry had a brief feud with Evan Bourne. The Airborne one defeated the World's Strongest Man twice, once by countout and another by disqualification. In the end, Mark Henry got a much-needed win when he got the 1-2-3 to end their feud. Soon after, Mark Henry would be traded from ECW to Raw, which entered Henry's alliance with Tony Atlas. After a few years of playing the villain, Henry became a good guy again. Back on the flagship show, Mark joined forces with MVP to chase after the Tag Team Championship, but came up short against the champions Jericho at Breaking Point. They later regrouped to try and take down Big Show and his new tag team partner The Miz for the titles, but once again couldn't capture the gold. After repeated failure, Mark Henry and MVP quietly went their separate ways. Despite the split, Henry kept chasing the tag team titles, now with a few different partners by his side. The first was Henry's former rival, Evan Bourne. It was a solid mix of speed and power, but unfortunately an injury cut their run short. This time it was Evan who had to spend time on the shelf. Henry then formed another briefly lived tag team with Yoshitatsu, but once again, the future Hall of Famer could not achieve tag team success. In April 2011, Mark Henry was drafted to SmackDown, and he and Tatsu ended their tag team. The same night that happened, Henry teamed with John Cena and Christian. During the match, Henry surprised everyone by attacking his teammates. Now back to being a bad guy, Henry kicked off a feud with the Big Show that began a little strangely. Bear with me. So Big Show was a Raw superstar and was feuding with Alberto Del Rio. Del Rio's assistant, Ricardo Rodriguez, hit Show with a car on Raw, In retaliation, Show destroyed Rodriguez, and then the Giant appeared on SmackDown to confront Del Rio. However, SmackDown General Manager Teddy Long informed Show that criminal charges were being considered against him for his attack on Rodriguez. Since Big Show was in the building though, he'd be facing Mark Henry that night. Before the match could begin, Show assaulted Henry and knocked him out. Of course, the World's Strongest Man wouldn't stand for this, kicking off a series of matches throughout the year. The two first faced off at Money in the Bank, with Mark pulling out the victory after hitting a pair of World's Strongest Slams and running splashes. Not being satisfied with the pinfall, Henry proceeded to pick up a chair and used it to break Show's ankle. From there, the Hall of Pain was born. Mark would continue to destroy and injure his opponents and mockingly induct them into his infamous hall. Future victims would include Kane, Vladimir Kozlov, and the Great Khali. It seemed that Henry was unstoppable, and no one on the SmackDown brand had the courage to face him, until the Celtic Warrior stepped up. The two battled at SummerSlam, with perhaps Sheamus regretting his challenge after being slammed through a barricade and getting counted out. With a series of high-profile wins behind him, Henry set his sights on the World Heavyweight Champion, Randy Orton. It appeared the Legend Killer was out of his element as Henry attacked him multiple times before their match at Night of Champions. This proved to be the case when during the championship match, Orton attempted to deliver an RKO, but was countered into the World's Strongest Slam. After getting the pin, Henry finally won heavyweight gold after 15 years in WWE. Unfortunately for the WWE roster, Mark Henry's reign of terror had only begun. The Viper came up short in a rematch at Hell in a Cell, and the next challenger for the belt was a familiar face who was out for revenge. The Big Show returned to SmackDown and reignited his feud with the heavyweight champ by chokeslamming Henry through the announcer's table. This set up a massive meeting of the two heavyweights at Vengeance. While there was no winner in this contest, the match did see one of the most memorable moments of the year. For the finale, Henry superplexed the Big Show, causing the ring to implode. After this spectacle, there was going to have to be a rematch. The next meeting between the two was at Survivor Series and resulted in Henry delivering a low blow to Big Show, ending the match in a DQ. In retaliation for the cheap shot, Show returned the favor and destroyed Mark's ankle with a chair. On the following episode of SmackDown, Big Show picked up where he left off and laid out the World Heavyweight Champion. Things got interesting when Daniel Bryan rushed the ring and cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase and won the title. Or so we thought. SmackDown GM Teddy Long declared Henry wasn't medically cleared to compete, and the championship remained on the shoulders of the World's Strongest Man. After that little bump, Big Show and Mark Henry soon had their third match at the final pay-per-view of 2011, TLC. It was short, but incredibly chaotic. The Big Show defeated the Hall of Pain leader to win the heavyweight title, but it didn't end there. Bryan cashed in his Money in the Bank contract and toppled the Giant within seconds after Show had been laid out by Henry with a DDT onto some chairs. Of course, Mark wouldn't take this lying down. He faced off against Bryan in a lumberjack match on SmackDown to try and regain his title. He came up short though, due to a no contest, but had another shot at the Royal Rumble in a triple threat cage match that also included the Big Show. Despite being at a great size disadvantage, Bryan was once again able to hold on to the gold after escaping the cage. After that, Mark Henry joined John Laurinaitis and his team to take on Henry's former manager Teddy Long and his group. The two sides faced off at WrestleMania 27. While Henry didn't get the pin, his team still won, and this is the first time Mark Henry had won a match at WrestleMania. The victory made John Laurinaitis the manager of both Raw and SmackDown, who then gave Mark Henry a WWE Championship match the next night. Surprisingly, Henry won the match by countout, setting up a rematch between Mark and the champion CM Punk the following week. The World's Strongest Man won again by DQ, but since titles don't switch hands on disqualification, Henry didn't capture the gold. For the third week in a row, Mark Henry and Punk faced off. Similar to Mark Henry's feud with Evan Bourne, only with the roles reversed, Punk won the war. Using the no DQ, no countout stipulation to his advantage, the straight-edge superstar leaped off the top rope with a chair and planted it on Mark's face. Soon after this, in real life, Mark Henry would have a potentially career-ending surgery. Thankfully, it all went well, but it did keep Mark out of the ring for 9 months. Henry returned in February 2013 and made an impact by leveling Daniel Bryan, Rey Mysterio, and Sin Cara. The Hall of Pain was officially back open for business, with Randy Orton becoming the next man inducted. Henry defeated him on SmackDown a few days after his return to earn entry into the World Heavyweight Championship Elimination Chamber match. It didn't appear the time off affected Mark, as he eliminated Kane and Daniel Bryan in the match, but the Legend Killer eventually got his revenge when he eliminated the planet's strongest man. Next up was another battle of behemoths as Henry set his sights on the nearly unstoppable Ryback. The immovable force and the unstoppable object had their showdown at WrestleMania 29. While the match featured a plethora of big power moves, its largely remembered for the strange ending. Henry won due to Ryback being unable to lift him up for his shell-shock finisher and falling down into a pin. That disappointing feud ended right after WrestleMania, as Ryback turned his back on the fans the following night by attacking John Cena. Henry then moved on to a rivalry with another hard-hitting wrestler. Enter his old foe, Sheamus. The two faced off at Extreme Rules in a strap match, but Mark wasn't able to continue his WrestleMania momentum and took the loss. Shortly after the defeat, the Olympic athlete declared he was going home. This began rumors of retirement that continued as Henry remained off TV for the next couple of months. In June, he tweeted that he would give answers about his career on Raw. What happened next may be the most memorable segment of Mark Henry's career and arguably one of the best performances in WWE history. An emotional Henry came to the ring, dressed in a suit, and tearfully announced his retirement. The crowd completely bought into it and chanted loudly for Henry and sexual chocolate. Cena came out for the big moment and even handed Henry the WWE Championship to show his appreciation. After a big hug between the two longtime stars, the World's Strongest Man showed it was all set up and laid out the champ with the World's Strongest Slam. This set up a title match at Money in the Bank, but unfortunately, WWE didn't capitalize on the moment. At the pay-per-view, Cena held on to the title by making Mark tap out to the STF. The following night on Raw, Henry sought a rematch with Cena, but was laid out by the Shield in a 3-on-1 attack. After about 2 years as a villain, Mark was back to being a good guy and battled the newcomers in a handful of tag team matches alongside a few different tag team partners. During this time, Mark suffered another injury, but was only out of action for a couple of months. On his return, he defeated his old WrestleMania opponent, Ryback, after answering his open challenge at Survivor Series. Despite a strong comeback, 2013 didn't end well for Mark Henry. On the final Raw of the year, Henry confronted Brock Lesnar, but was laid out with an F5. A week later, Mark tried to get even with the Beast, but ended up having his elbow dislocated instead. For good measure, Lesnar gave Mark Henry one final beatdown in March by F5ing Henry through the announcer's table. After being absent for a few months, Henry returned and formed a tag team with former rival, The Big Show. Soon after, Henry would confront Rusev and Lana when they started trashing the US. This set up a match at Night of Champions that the World's Strongest Man lost. About a month later, Mark Henry would return to his villainous ways by attacking Big Show during a tag team match. This reignited a feud between them, which grew into a much bigger battle when Mark Henry joined Team Authority and Big Show joined Team John Cena. The two sides clashed at Survivor Series, where Henry would be the first person eliminated when the Big Show knocked him out only 50 seconds into the match. Henry was taken out with yet another injury and returned in March 2015. When he did, the World's Strongest Man berated Roman Reigns, saying no one respected him. This caused Roman to beat up Mark Henry, who said afterward that he was now a believer in Reigns. This made Mark Henry a fan favorite again, but it became clear that while WWE still valued Mark Henry, his time as a main event star was over. This was made even more apparent by all the random stuff Mark Henry would do. At the 2015 Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, Henry replaced Rusev in the Intercontinental Championship match, but was eliminated by his old rival, Sheamus. In early 2016, Mark Henry formed a tag team with Jack Swagger. While it didn't go anywhere, the two were technically undefeated, and one of their victories earned them spots in the 2016 Royal Rumble match. It didn't do much though, as the World's Strongest Man was eliminated in 47 seconds by the Wyatt family. At WrestleMania 32, Mark Henry was a participant in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, but didn't win. In July, Mark Henry was drafted to the Raw roster, where he would say he still had a lot left in him. He even mentioned bringing back the Hall of Pain, but that didn't go anywhere. At the 2017 Royal Rumble, Mark Henry entered at number 6, but was eliminated again by Braun Strowman. This set up Mark Henry's final singles match in WWE. On the February 13th, 2017 episode of Raw, Henry fought Strowman in a battle of the super heavyweights. Sadly, it was clear that the World's Strongest Man was only there to make the Monster Among Men look good. Henry got in a few shots, but was unable to connect with the World's Strongest Slam and was pinned after a massive power slam. A couple of months later, Mark Henry competed again in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal at WrestleMania. Like last year though, Mark Henry was eliminated and lost. With roughly 20 years under his belt, the World's Strongest Man quietly retired and took on a backstage role. In 2018, he was recognized for his contributions with a well-earned induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. However, the World's Strongest Man had one more match in him. A few weeks after his Hall of Fame induction, Mark Henry entered as the 5th participant in the Greatest Royal Rumble. Curtis fought back, but until the next participant came out. At number 7 was sumo wrestler Hiroki Sumi. The big men looked each other in the eye and sized the other up. As far as final matches go, it wasn't all that notable for Henry, but it could have been worse. He was only in the ring for a few minutes, but they let him look dominant for that brief time. It is a bit odd though that Henry's final match was against a guy who was never seen in a WWE ring again. Henry joined the company against a king and left with a sumo wrestler. After his final match, Mark Henry continued mentoring talent backstage and made one last appearance for the company on Raw Legends Night in 2021. Later that year, he joined All Elite Wrestling, a few months after his old rival and tag team partner The Big Show did. At this point, it's unlikely we'll ever see the world's strongest man step back in the ring for a match. On Busted Open Radio, Henry revealed that he has nerve damage in his back and occasionally has to take a wheelchair through an airport. Still, the man never needs to wrestle another match again, as his legacy has been firmly cemented in the wrestling business. Now for something special. Back in 2022, I made a post on my community tab asking for people to vote for my wrestling company, Below Zero Wrestling, in a local contest. Thanks to all your help, Below Zero took home 2nd place. Now I'm gonna thank everyone who helped make that happen. Curtis, Eric Ruther, Jack Webb, Shawn Michaels, Adrian, Joshua Congolo, Daksha XO, Havox, The Green Pianist, Roshan, Gabriel Cueva, Dallas Davis, Musicaphilic, Harold Dan TDM fan, Zeta Martinez, a WWE fan, Script Sky Samurai, Omar Allen, Oscar J. Velasco, Greater One, Joseph Stadius Horn S, Carnage Killer, Tofka Animal, R Money 2211, Hook Da Dragonall, Mediocre Spider Mike, Adrian Moore, Connor B, Sherry Brooks, High Rise 777, Utchris Gandhi, Setiel, Jack Rack, Marigal Danielle, 0 Billion, Trippy Hippie, Henrique Quitus, Groggy Ostrich 52 Gaming, Idris Akbari, Ta Darkwolf, Kanki Mahota, Matt King, Curtis, The Awoken Gamer, Bassam Beg, Izzy Number 12, Epic Wrestling, Anoop R, Craig Mad Dog Anderson, Sin Shiner Soul, JCC, Sultan Mansud, Omar Batisha, Captcha, T8, Parga 138, John Paulo, Sandra Burns, Micker Macker, James Condent, L Top, Ethan Dameron 2, Clayton Ray Houghton, Katika the White, Lentil Official, Dan Ush, Huss Amnus, Maceface Gaming, Prince Orkazai Gaming, Sci-Fi Shake, Slash Forever Sumnum, Megastar Ty, Eggle Beatboxer, The Awesome Dude 101, Gust 4482, The Demon Deuce, Juan Rodriguez, Timothy Hill, The Fiend, Del Zico, WCG847, Iwa Amo, An Norakami, Ken J. Ahar, Ahmed Yashrib Schraben, Juan Toledo Lopez, The Harris Fam, King of the Jungle, Daniel Blacko, Orbit NY, Luke 2K, Alex Franco, Abdil Balak, Matthew Blazek, Abdul Muid, Raiden MVP4, L, Real Dan is 2005, Jaden Uchiha, White Rabbit, Ollie Benson, Shrek, Racer Chicks 21, Kishore Rathor, RXFQ, Jan Musile, Braylon Guyot, Watchman Adam, Mr. Pon 1, Rin is Cupid, Davies, Don McHenry, SWS Network, Jacoby, Ralph IHL, Call Me Winner 555, Shalak Sam Varghese, Lord _of Redstone, THJ Say 12, Sean Hayes, KT1 Games, Nemo Pouncy, Mr. James Hay, Tanish Chaudhry, Kaneen 18, LAX World, Lance Fry, AI _2097, G Kirkov, DHXST20, Rajir Kanoji Shorts, Jack 574, Tacky MM, Richard Kennedy, Cameron Bennett, GG Gaming, GN0015, Austin Jenkins, Mad Mooks 8, Agent Dorito, Straight Facts, Alfie Jones, Luffy Kid 23, Coil, Mr. Iffy, Majib, John, Farmer Bob 32, Ramos Reviewer, The Joker, Aqua Leader Jesse, Gage Berdovich, Inactive Channel, and Spicer Sun. Thank you all for helping Below Zero Wrestling.